Welcome, I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, where we share relevant ideas that can impact and upgrade our everyday lives. And in this episode, together with the Wednesday night discussion group, we look at the relevance of Shavuot and the message that it has for us today. How did the Jews get to be the chosen nation? I spent years working on, with university students in Western Canada. And one of the questions that comes up is, you Jews are chosen people. Isn't that like racist? So here's the truth. Before God chose, how did the Jewish people come to be chosen? Is that before God gave the Jews the Torah, God offered it to all the other nations in the world. And one by one, each of the nations asked, what's in it, right? When God said, would you like this Torah? They said, what's in it? Tell us what's in it. And one by one, God told them the commandments that they, in their particular culture, would find difficult to keep. And at that point, the nations of the world said, no, thank you. And this went nation by nation by nation. Then God came to the Jewish people. Anyone wants to venture a guess as to what the Jews answered when God said, do you want the Torah? And if you know the answer, please hold off. Okay, if you don't know the answer and you'd like to venture a guess, that's what I'm looking for. What do you think the Jews said? I mean, we've got a bit of
yes.
We know what happened at the end. Okay, so
spoiler alert.
Yes, there was a bit of a spoiler alert. So you're right, but that's not the full story. So the full story is that they said we will do and we will understand, right? Which basically means is they fully committed. They said, yes, we want it, and we'll figure out the details kind of later. And when God heard this, God took great delight in the Jewish people and said, who taught them this secret that to first say we'll do, we'll accept, and then to say we'll listen, we'll find out the details later. Now, what's very interesting is that the Talmud tells a story of that happened years later, where someone came to Rava, who was the rabbi, and said, you know something, the Jews, they said we will do and we will listen. Well, that doesn't really show much. Really, they should have said, what's in it? They should have found out what they were committing to before they actually committed to it. Now, if you were asked that question, would you say, that's a fair enough point, or would you say no? What are your thoughts on that?
Is it a case like the Jews chose the Torah, so even though they had the option that they wanted to be part of it, and then find out what it entails later, but they're happy to join?
So they were more than happy to join. They committed.
Yeah.
The whole of the Torah, and they would find out the details later. So do you think it's that this person that came and said, like, whatever, the Jews were foolish, whatever he said about it, that they didn't ask first what it was?
It's almost like they're thinking outside of the box, and if you ask too many questions, then you'll never do it. Like if you have too many choices, so by not asking, you find out along the way. And it's almost like if it suits you, if it doesn't suit you, but you'll just keep going till it suits you.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Would they not have just put their faith in God that it was the right thing for them, if they were being offered it anyway?
That is a very strong point. That it's almost like they had faith, right? Any other thoughts? Anyone else wants to weigh in? So I think it's very similar to what Lindsay and Bev said, is that this is what Rava said. He said that the faith of the righteous will guide them and the cunning of the disloyal will destroy them. Now, which is as Bev and Lindsay were saying, is that what the Jews were showing is that they understood that if God is giving us the Torah, then of course it's for our benefit. So let's not, ask too many questions. Let's just commit, and we'll find out the detail. We'll find out the details as we go along. But their commitment was an act of faith. Now, my question on this is, and it's not just my question, the question I saw on this is, generally in the Talmud, any story that's brought down is brought down because there is something for us to learn from it. Now, even before I told you this story, a couple of you had already guessed, right? The fact that the Jews said, we will do and we will listen, was a sign of their faith that what God was giving them was going to be ultimately for our good. So what is this story teaching us? What is this conversation between the person who had the complaint and Rava, the rabbi, teaching us? So here's what it's teaching us, and you may appreciate what he's telling us is the guy was not just saying they should have found out before they jumped in. He said, they should have found out before they committed. Why? Because then it would have been so much more meaningful. I don't know if it's only me, but there are times where I get myself into things because I haven't fully thought it out. And then after I've got myself into it, I'm like, oops. And it's like, whatever, like, okay, I'm in it, right? But it's not a sign of my commitment to whatever it is, or my passion for whatever it is. I'm thinking of a couple of weeks ago when I agreed to sign to bake challah for the school fundraiser, and I ended up with like something like, I don't know,
5,000.
35 challah. And I did it because I was like, it won't take that long. And then I was like, it's like way underestimated, right? I don't know, does this happen to anyone else or just me?
Only if my baking was like yours.
Well, it happens, right? So the point he was making was that it would have been much more meaningful had they first found out what they were committing to, and then they were committing to. Now, that's a good argument, right? What would you say to that sort of argument? Maybe we should have found out first before, so that it would be meaningful, that we can turn around and we say, you know what, we looked into it, and yeah, we really do want this. Is there any downside to doing it that way?
There would have been more questions, and they would have been more hesitant, maybe.
So I think you're hitting on a very, very good point. Anyone else wants to add anything to that?
Whatever challenges that come along the way, good or bad, it's almost like the Jewish people are ready for it. So they don't need to ask any questions. They'll just go for it, and they'll literally learn along the way.
Yes, although we do see that along the way, I mean, if you this is a conversation for another time, the Jews had many challenges, and the Jews are known as a stubborn people, right? We're not people that are easily persuaded and easily led along, right? So they did have the challenges and they did have the questions, which perhaps is why it was so remarkable that when they were offered it, they jumped right in without the questions. So I think what Louise is saying is spot on, right? Because sometimes if you know exactly what's going to be, then we have a lot of questions, right? And what happens next is we have a lot of questions, is we might think, that's not happening. I'll give you an example. I think all of us are pretty much are parents on here. Is that correct? Yes. So imagine if you would sit down with a 16-year-old, and I happen to know a 16-year-old. I'm related to one. He's my son. Now imagine if I would sit down with my son and explain to him exactly what's involved in parenting, and then at the end of it ask, would you like to raise a family? Any guesses what he's going to say?
No
Keep 'em
way.
for life.
No way, right? And these are all parents that are saying that they would say no way, right? Now, for parents, is it the same? Is it, we look past, okay, we've been parenting, whether it's 2 years or 10 years or 20 years or however long you've been parenting, is it the same? Is it that now we know? So now we know, are we going to say, if I had my time again? What do most parents at that point say? Would they do it all over again, knowing exactly what's involved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a learning curve along the way.
Yeah.
There are like times where you do think, oh my gosh, what have I done? But it's a learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the day, right? But, let's just say the kids are sleeping and you've had your time to unwind and sort of recover from the day. Most parents at that point are going to say, yes, I would do it.
Yeah.
I would do it all over again, except I have someone on Instagram. Are you saying no, you would still do it, or no, you wouldn't do it again? But we'll find out. But the average parent is going to say, yes, I would do it all over again. What's the difference? What's the difference between, the 16-year-old that you've sat down and explained to it, which he wouldn't get it anyway, even if you tried. But imagine if you could. What's the difference between at the beginning when you know what it is, and afterwards when you've been through and you know exactly what it is? What changes that beforehand you say, no way, there's no way I'm doing it, and afterwards you would say, you know what, it's crazy and it's the hardest thing ever, but I would still do it all over again.
Your love changes for them. The thing, like, you have someone who needs you, have someone who, like, all my friends are basically single, and I'm basically the only one who's married and has kids. And they say to me, like, don't you miss, like, not having kids? And I say to them, no, like, now it's just kind of having this person who's always there, who loves you no matter what, and you love them. You just kind of, it's normal now. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yes. Anyone else wants to add or say anything?
I think if you were to give somebody a warning as to what it was like, you would definitely say no because of how hard it sounds. But your love for the kids and everything else, it takes over. It's different. But I think most people would say yes, they would do it again, but they would do it differently.
Yeah. Yes. Well, hopefully we'll have learned a thing or two. But so what? Yeah. Yes, it's the love and this thing, but on a very simplistic level, why, now that you know exactly how challenging it is, are you happy are you glad that you did it?
The children are like an extension of you. They're also literally the line that keep the Jewish faith going. And again, it's unconditional. You created, obviously not created a monster, but you've created the child and children, and then they'll go on to create theirs when they've had their own experiences, lived life a bit, when they're ready.
Yeah.
And then the chain keeps going.
Yes, you're 100% right. And you're all right. I'm looking for the most simplistic answer that can apply to parenting or any difficult thing that you may have done in your life.
It's rewarding.
It's rewarding and it's
natural.
I'm not. I mean, yes, it is natural, but I would say to flesh out what Sharon said, it's worth it. Would you not say?
Yeah, you do it again and again.
Worth it.
Right,
we are the ones chosen to be their parents.
Yes.
There's only one of you.
Even if it is 10 to 9 at night and they're still both out of bed.
that is, and dear friends, is true love, right? But is it correct to say that the reason why we don't look back and say, the reason why we look back and say we would do it again is because it's worth it? It's crazy hard, but it's still worth it. Whereas in the beginning, if you're looking at it from the outside, you know, from the exactly, right? That if you're looking at it in the view of a 16-year-old, right, and just hearing about it, you would, even if I told you it's worth it, you'd say it's possible, maybe it's worth it, but it's impossible. I can't do it, right? It's impossible. It's too hard. I cannot do it. And that is what the secret of that rabbi was teaching that man, what he was telling him. He was saying that the faith of the righteous will guide them, whereas the cunning of the disloyal will destroy them. Sometimes we can be too smart for our own good, right? Sometimes we can, I'm going to say a word which I'm guessing no one here has ever done. We can overthink things. Possible?
All the time.
Never. No one here ever, none of us ever overthinks things, right? And if you know, sometimes people say Judaism is so wonderful. It's like such a lovely religion. It helps you celebrate certain lifestyles. It makes you feel connected. Judaism is so much more than that. Judaism is kind of like an operating system. It's a whole different way of living our life, right? And if the Jews were to have asked God, what's inside the Torah, and they would have opened it up, and they would have seen all the mitzvahs, right? Then they probably would have said, it's impossible. It's impossible. It sounds lovely. Maybe it sounds lovely. I don't know, but it's impossible. And it's the same thing sometimes with Shabbat. I'll give you an example. Shabbat is a perfect example, right? For someone who's never had a Shabbat before, who's never experienced a full Shabbat, if they hear about Shabbat, they think that's crazy, right? Like there's so many things, so many restrictions, so many things you have to do beforehand, so many things that you can't do on it, so many do's, so many don'ts. It's impossible. But what happens is, imagine if you go on a Shabbaton, right, or you experience a Shabbat, when you immerse yourself in it, it's like amazing. And you turn around to the other person, and I've seen this so many times. We ran Shabbatons in Western Canada for 10 years, and we you know, for Seed we did them, and please God, again, we will also have the opportunity to do more seminars. But when someone actually experiences a Shabbat, it's a whole different experience. You ask them at the end of it, would you like to do it again? And a lot of times people say yes. Why? Because when you hear about it and when you think it through, sometimes you think, oh my gosh, that's impossible. There's no way I could do it. It's, you know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't worth it, but it's impossible. But once you actually experience it, it's a totally different, you're experiencing it, and you're experiencing the totality of it, and then it becomes something that, yes, it may be hard or maybe challenging or maybe something that you have to put effort into, but it becomes something that's worth it. I'll give you a story that I think really, really illustrates it. So after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, there was a rabbi, and he went through the Holocaust, unfortunately, and suffered terribly through it. And afterwards, he moved to Israel. And anyone here has heard of the city Bnei Barak? Anyone?
Yes. Jerusalem.
At the moment, so Bnei Barak right now is a thriving city, full of Haredi Jews. At the time, it was a desolate place. After the Holocaust, it was desolate. There was nothing there. It was just a hill. And so the rabbi comes there, and he points to the hill, to the hill, and he says, here I want to build a yeshiva, and we're going to have, you know, hundreds of students studying Torah. And the people that he are with look at him and they think to themselves, the Holocaust was very traumatic. Unfortunately, he seems to have lost his mind. Why? Because it's impossible. This is a desert. There's nothing here, right? At that point, who in Israel wanted to study Torah? Like, no one, maybe a handful of people. Like, it's not even a dream. It's just, you know, it's a hallucination. It's impossible. What happened is the rabbi didn't think about, is it possible, isn't possible. He went and he started it. And now we look back at it and we cannot even imagine a situation where someone would point to Bnei Barak and be laughed at because they would suggest that that the Torah that would turn into yeshiva. Why? Because we, you know, as I think that there's a rabbi called the Alter of Navardo, and he used to tell his students, he said, don't ask if something is possible, ask whether it's necessary, right? Because if you ask, is something possible, if we get bogged down with the details, can I do it, can I not do it? The answer we usually come up with is not possible. I can't do this. I'm not religious enough. I'm too old. I'm too set in my ways. It's too hard. It's just not the type of person I am. But if you ask, is this necessary? Do I have to do this? As Lindsay said earlier, right? Like considering that we are a chain in that link of Judaism from all the way back from Sinai, and we are the ones that are going to pass it on to the next generation. And if we ask that question from that perspective, is it necessary that I do this so that my children and their children will have a strong Jewish future? The answer is very different. And then if we just do, it's a totally different answer. Then instead of weighing up, can I, can't I, should I, shouldn't I, we just do as the Jews did then. They say, we will do, and then we will listen, right? We commit to doing it, and then we'll find out the details, because we know that the Torah has been given to us by God, and it's been given to us for our benefit. And therefore, we know that if we do our part, if we commit to it, then it's possible to do it, even though from the outside it sounds impossible. Now, I want to throw in one further question, and which I think is really fascinating. It's almost like a plot twist, right? So it sounds amazing. Here we are. We have this almost like this love story, this relationship between God and the Jewish people. God offers the Jewish people this Torah, and the Jewish people, totally trustworthy, say we want it, right? We're not sure exactly what it entails, but we trust that this is for our benefit, and we commit. Then what happens is they come to Sinai, and we're told something incredible. And what happens is, at Sinai, God is about to give the Jewish people the Torah, and God lifts this mountain over their heads, holds it over their heads, and says, you've got a choice now. Either you accept the Torah, or I'm going to bury you with this mountain. Can anyone guess what the Jews chose? You may have a slight spoiler alert, but can anyone guess what the Jews chose? No? No guesses?
I'm guessing they didn't want to be buried under a mountain.
Wow, very profound.
What can I say?
Yes, in the midst of genius. Yes, well done. And look, let's be honest, it's not much of a choice, right? At that point, it's not much of a choice. What are they going to say at that point? So let me ask you a question. Why did God need to do that? They had already accepted the Torah. They had already said, we want it. Why did God need to sort of force them into a corner to accept it?
To see the determination and strong will that they're going to carry it through and not going to change partway through.
So to touch on what you're saying, what happens if someone gives you a gift and then you're done with it? What do you do with the gift?
It's gone. It's lost.
Conveniently lose it, pass it on to someone else, gift it to the charity shop, right? If you're given a gift and you're done with it, or you no longer appreciate it or whatever, then you give it on. It's a gift, right? It's optional. You can give it on. Torah is much more than just a gift. Yes, ultimately it's a gift, but it's more than just a gift. What do I mean by that? And we see this in the morning blessings. Every morning, there are 3 blessings that we make on receiving the Torah. Now, it's fascinating. I'm going to read you out that I'm going to read you out the first blessing. And it says, "Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, who sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to be busy with the words of Torah." What are we talking about here? Are we talking about the Torah as a gift?
A way of life.
Yes, but what is it here? It's a commandment. It's much more than just a gift, right? We're talking about it like this is a commandment. It's no longer just something that, you know, they was offered to the Jews and they accepted it and that's wonderful. Here it is it's a commandment, right? Then what happens is we say there's a prayer and we ask God to make it sweet make the Torah sweet. What's going on here is that just like in a relationship, right? If you think about a relationship, let's talk about a marriage. So what happens is the couple, they meet and they fall in love, and one of them will propose or whatever, and they decide to be together. But then there's a commitment to each other, right? The marriage is much more than just, yes, let's hang out together. We enjoy being together, whatever else it is. It's we commit to each other, right? So the Torah is both. It's that gift, because ultimately we, as we started off by saying, the reason why the Jews said yes, we will do, is because they understood that if God is giving it to us, it's for our benefit, right? But then there's a commitment, there's a relationship here going on, and God then took the mountain and sort of forced them into a corner and said, either you accept it or the mountain will get buried under it. Because now that you have chosen, you have to understand that it's not just a gift, an optional gift that you take when it suits you, and you don't take, and you give it back when you don't, when it doesn't suit you. This is a commitment. This is a commandment. This is something that is eternal, right? And sometimes we go throughout our history, or even in our individual lives, right? There are times where we're inspired and we want, and we feel the fire, and we feel the commitment, and we feel the joy of Judaism. And then it wanes, right? That's how life goes. We have ups and we have downs. But what that is telling us, and what we say every morning in these 3 blessings, is that there is more than just a gift. It's a commitment, right? It's an obligation. It's a responsibility that we accepted upon ourselves. And now that we've accepted it, it's a responsibility. And then we ask God to make it pleasant in our mouth, right? We say the words of the Torah should be pleasant. Why? Because Torah is supposed to be pleasant. A Torah way of life is supposed to be pleasant. Shabbat is supposed to be an amazing experience. It is supposed to be something that is the highlight of our life. And if it's not, then we need to get into it so that it becomes beautiful. But then after we've asked God to make it pleasant for us, then we finished by thanking God who chose us from amongst the people and gave us. We talk about the Torah as a gift, right? So there's those 2 levels of the Torah. There's that, yes, God offers it to us, and we chose it because we understood that if it comes from God, it's for our benefit. And then once we chose it, God said, yes, it's a gift. Yes, it's for your good, but also it's eternal. It's something that now is it's your responsibility. You've got it for the rest of your life. There's kind of like, there's no backing out. It's kind of like a commitment that in a relationship, right? That once you have a relationship and you know, you commit to each other, and obviously we're talking about normal healthy relationships here. I'm just using it as as an analogy. I'm not talking about relationships, but the idea is that once you've made that commitment to each other in a normal, healthy relationship, yes, you have ups and you have downs, but when you have a down, there's a commitment to each other, so you work it through. Okay. Obviously, disclaimer: I'm talking about healthy, normal relationships, but it's the same thing here. It's that two parts of it. There's that gift, but there's also that commitment that we understand that this is something that God has commanded us, right? It's not just something that we opt in and we opt out when as and when it suits us, but it's something that we opted in, and now we're in fully. We're fully committed, and we will do, and we will listen. And this is what happens at Shavuot, right? Shavuot is a time when we commemorate, but it's so much more, because it's got, every Jewish festival has the energy of it. And the energy of Shavuot, which is coming up on Monday and Tuesday, is when we renew our relationship and our commitment to God and the Torah. And we renew it. We renew our faith in realizing that this is a gift, right? That incorporating the Torah lifestyle into our life, it's a gift, right? It's for our benefit. And we pray and ask God to help us make it sweet, to help us find that inspiration, to help us find that joy, to help us as understand how to make it joyful, so that then it becomes something that we truly see as a gift in our life. And the way we do it is by remembering that this is a gift. And sometimes we gotta think less and just jump in, right? Say, yes, this is something that I want to do. Not just overthink and say, I'm not religious enough. It's too, I'm too old. It's whatever. Maybe this is not the right time. But realize that, this is a time of renewing our commitment. And when we do that commitment, when we say we will, right? When we show our faith in this beautiful gift of a Torah lifestyle, then Nishma, we get the gift of hearing what God wants us to do next. What is the next step that God wants us to take in our Jewish journeys? Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. You can get in touch with me. You can find me on Instagram at Gila Ross. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.